Hello, welcome to the 20th episode of the Year of Being 70, which was initiated by my lifelong friend, Lucy McCarrer. Our mothers were friends. My name is Lisette Schuitenmaker. I'm in Amsterdam, and Lucy is in the UK.
I am
You
indeed.
are. And this time we're going to talk about, maybe you also, listener, have people in your lives that have been an influence that, without them you wouldn't be who you are, or without them maybe your life had taken a different course. So we're going to remember three people who have been a great influence in our lives. And I am so curious, Lucy, tell me your first.
Well, yes, I will. I just think we should say that we sort of decide on a topic that we're going to talk about, but we don't tell each other what we are going to specifically say. Or so, for instance, Lisette doesn't know who I'm going to talk about today, and I don't know who she's going to talk about today. So this is why sometimes our our discussions go down quite unexpected routes. So yes, so okay, so two of the when I said people, I mean it's not two people. What I mean is two of the my influences are going to be groups of people who will have no idea. They might not. Most of them won't even know who I am. I mean, it's not kind of like I'm going to not talk about, for example, my family, my
No,
parents,
let's not.
or
It's
like
not our spouses and our
that
families. Of
no,
course, they are a huge influence. We're going
exactly,
to talk about
exactly.
other people.
Exactly. So the first group of people I am going to talk about are a, my class of when I was 16, 17, 18. My class at school. I went to a new school. I had been at boarding school, and before that, I had been at a private day school, and I'd been brought up in a very um, uh, uh, limited, I suppose, upper middle class environment where I took a lot of things for granted. And I suppose I took for granted that I had a great education and that actually I didn't have to work terribly hard because I was one of those sort of lucky people for whom most school subjects came quite easily. I mean, I got less good at maths over the years, but I didn't really care about that too much. So, I never kind of worked terribly hard. In fact, I didn't even understand what working hard meant, I think. So what happened was, I changed school. I was at boarding school. I did what we then called our O levels, which is a sort of 16-year-old exams that you
What
do.
does O actually stand for?
It's ordinary. It was,
Ordinary. You do your
yes.
ordinary
Oh,
levels. You become
yes,
very ordinary.
that's right.
Okay. I never knew that. So it's a revelation.
No, that's right. And then our A levels, which we do at
Advanced.
yes, yes, well done. And those stayed the same. O levels are now called GCSEs, and to be honest, I don't even know what that means. I think maybe something like General Certificate of School Education. I really don't know, but that's what they're called, GCSEs now. But anyway, when I had been at boarding school for 3 and a bit years, and I had got fed up with being at boarding school, and I asked my parents if I could come back to day school and live in London and live at home. And they said yes. I don't recall having any kind of input into this, but they picked a school for me. And it was called Godolphin and Latimer, and it was in Hammersmith. And it was known to be a very good, fairly academic school. And that was all. And we knew a few people, their friends' daughters who were there. I didn't know anybody there, well, personally. So they went and picked this school, and they went and spoke to the head mistress, as she was called then, the head teacher, and they liked the school. They were shown round, and they asked what the fees were, and she said there are no fees. This is a direct grant grammar school, and that was surprising. Basically, it was a state school. They were delighted because there were no fees and it was a good school. But when I got there, it was like a revelation to me. there were my classmates, there were one or two people that I sort of knew from my kind of social life, if you like,
Circle.
social circle. But the majority of the girls there came from working class, middle class, kind of perfectly normal families.
So
But
wait a
they,
minute, you say girls.
yes, it
It
was a
was a
girls'
girls'
it
school.
was an all girls
We
school.
did not have that. And I mean, yeah, we had the MMS, but that was really being phased out when I,
What
so
was
you,
MMS? What does MMS stand for?
well, it's too difficult because of that, but that was an only girls, I think,
Oh, I see.
school, but that was, we felt all that was so old-fashioned, but you went to an all-girls school,
I went
okay?
to all girls school all
But
through.
these girls were a major influence on you.
They were. I mean, I was amazed by them. Really, they were extremely cool. I mean, this was like 1970, I guess, 1969, 70. They were very cool, and they were Londoners. They were, they dressed fashionably. But they were very, very smart. I mean, they were clever in a way that I felt that none of the people I'd been at school with before were clever, because I mean, but mainly they really valued their education. They were working extremely hard. There was also, what was also available at that time was free university education. And they were going to be, in most cases, I would say, the first people in their family to go to university, or certainly the first women, probably, the first generation. And they were absolutely focused on the work we did at school, on, it wasn't sort of geeky. It was part of
They were
their,
eager to learn
they were eager to
and
learn,
they took it seriously
and
and
they took it
valued what they were
seriously.
learning.
Exactly,
Yeah.
which I would say that none of, well, very few of the girls that I'd been at school with before were, I mean, some of them did take it seriously, but mostly we were just kind of, we were just lucky people. I don't know, anything we had never discussed. I mean, some people were certainly going to go to university, but it wasn't like it was a necessity. We were going to be okay. We were going to get married. I mean, we didn't even discuss it. It wasn't, sort of,
So what was the influence? I mean, how has
so,
this influenced your life?
so it influenced my life in a way that I thought that the world I came from somehow it kind of lacks reality. Um, it's
Ah.
not what most people, it's not how most people live. It
So you
is,
stepped out of kind of a bubble of privilege
yes,
into the real world or the world made up of a variety of people and not of a certain code and standard and wealth and privilege, so
exactly,
to say.
exactly.
And you kind of discovered, whoa, there's a
Yes,
whole
and the other
world out
thing,
there.
yeah, the other thing, most of these girls had Saturday jobs, or,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
worked as well as, and that, was just not something that any of my kind of compatriots from other schools had done. So I used to sit, there was a common room where, I think it was the A-level years, the 2 years would sit and talk. And I would just sit and listen and kind of be in awe of them, really. I didn't really make friends. It wasn't going to be an option for me to make friends with people and bring them home, say, come and have. I mean, people came from all over the place. I used to get the tube in from Kensington, from South Ken to Hammersmith. And,
That's
other
a very
people,
London information for
it's
people who
very
know
London
London really
information.
well.
Sorry
If you
about
don't
that.
know
Yeah,
London really well, that doesn't mean anything to you.
it's
No,
quite
but
a
I
lot.
understand that, the social circles
Yeah,
were distinct and didn't
yes.
really mix
It,
as they do maybe more easily now, but still, of course, that
yeah.
isn't
I
easy.
mean, this was a long time ago. And I
Yeah.
mean, funnily enough, my nieces also went to this school, but by the time they got there, it had turned into a private school. So it's still a very
So
good
then
school.
there were fees.
So yes, so there were fees. Yes, exactly, exactly. And a direct grant grammar school was something. I mean, a grammar school was obviously a selective school. Well, I say obviously, not obvious to you,
I
but
don't know. I
no,
understand nothing of the English school system.
no, no,
So this
no.
is
It's very
all a
complicated,
gobbledygook to me. But
arcane,
I
really.
want to know about the influence. So it kind of opened up your world and broadened your your view of people and how also people wanted to work to have a better life, so to say,
Yes,
and were
exactly.
eager for academic knowledge.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think it did make me try and work harder academically to actually,
Yeah.
not think I could just coast by. And yes, I mean, they just really impressed me, and I felt that, I had been born into such a kind of a lot of privilege educationally as well as financially that it was, I don't know, it just changed my view of
What did
how.
it open your gilded cage?
Did it open my gilded cage? Did I fly out? I'm not sure. Maybe yes, yes, in a way. Uh,
Maybe you carefully, treaded little steps out, but at least there was an opening from, yeah, from kind of a monoculture that you were in.
yeah, 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 absolutely. And also, I, I, I suppose there was possibly I'd kind of. I mean, nobody said this kind of thing, but there's a sort of perhaps a kind of a looking down on, people of a lower social class from where I came from.
Aha.
And I mean, and nobody said that. I wasn't brought up to think that consciously, but I, stopped, any kind of thoughts I might have had about on that kind of subject, if you like, were completely dismissed.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I suppose. I suppose that did lead to me. I mean, somehow I had a kind of left-wing leaning anyway, so it all played into it. But I wasn't political, but I think that kind of did feed into my, sort of left-leaning politics of later years, really.
Hmm.
So yes, I just want to kind of celebrate those girls who are now women. They must be exactly the same age as us. I don't know what's
They're also in their year of being 70,
also in their year of.
probably.
I don't know any of them. I don't know what's happened to them. I am sure they have led, wonderful, fulfilling lives, and I really hope so. But they were amazing. They were fantastic people, and I'm glad to
Great.
have been in their
In their sphere.
yeah, their sphere exactly. So,
Hmm.
Lisette, who were you going to nominate as your?
Well, the first one I'm going to nominate is called Mrs. Miedema. She was the mother of my friend Lineke Miedema, who I am not in touch with, who I've never seen again. She was like my friend when we were 7, 8. And I loved going to their house to play because in our house, I've read somewhere that in every family, there's like three things that bring you kind of points. In some families, you need to be a sports person or you need to be intelligent or academic. And with us, it was really speed, speed, speed. Everything, speed was the value. If you could do things fast, if
In
my
your
mother,
family,
huh?
in your family,
In
rather
our
than.
family. So
Yeah.
if my mother had cooked a nice meal and somebody said something, she said, I did it in 12 minutes. So speed was the thing. And in this household, there was no speed at all. And Mrs. Miedema would lie down on the couch and watch us play, and we would play on the ground and and she would be there. And I felt, and I can recall that moment, and that's why I think of her often. I felt seen by her, not more for my presence and for my, essential self, my soul, so to say, than for my schoolwork or if
Your
I
speed.
could do ping pong really well or whatever. And because in those days, I did not understand that she had cancer. I did not
Oh
know, and
no.
nobody spoke about that. So that's why she was lying down on the couch. She was
Oh,
ill, but I didn't know that.
no.
There was an atmosphere in that house that was more about love and being together, and also, of course, loss and suffering because her children, Lineke was the eldest, so there were three children, really young. And on some day, my mother heard that this woman had died, and I wanted to come. There was like you could come to the house and visit, and she was upstairs, and and my mother did not want to take me, but I was adamant. I was adamant. And then my mother went upstairs to kind of see her because there was kind of this wake and didn't allow me to go there. So I couldn't say goodbye. And so this speaks to all these things that are not said, at the time, but I felt, and I'm so grateful to her for seeing me whilst I felt so different from the others, and really for her presence.
And how has that influenced you in your later life?
I don't know, but I think of her often. And, I was just at a conference in London. We met in the flesh.
We did.
And, one of the organizers said, I always enjoy your presence in a conference. And so that is the greatest compliment. I will not be acknowledged for my, wealth of information and uh, uh, you know, uh, data points but yeah, the power of presence and how we can open up to each other when we are present in the moment and when we take time to kind of be with another person and then see what emerges.
And when she was lying and watching you play, was it just something you felt, or did she speak to you? Did she acknowledge you verbally?
No, it was something I felt. And of course, it was very different from my super active mother, who was always organizing us and organizing everything. So, but it was maybe, it's a memory. It may also be a fantasy, a moment of, catching her eye. And in that moment, I thought she kind of conveyed to me how different I was from her daughter and how that was fine. How that was, I don't know, I felt completely seen by her.
Wonderful. What a wonderful legacy for her to have left. How old were you and how old was she, do you think, when she died?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was 9 and people had their children early, so she must have been like no older than 35.
Oh, wow. Gosh.
Yeah. And the family moved away and we lost touch and I've never seen them again.
No.
But I can name her, and who knows, through an act of utter synchronicity, one of those children, Lineke Miedema, Hans Miedema, and then the youngest, I do not remember her name, I'm sorry. But yeah, so that
Well,
was my first person.
that's amazing. That's very moving, actually. Uh,
Yes, it
and,
moves
and,
me
and a,
too.
yes, and a wonderful tribute to somebody who so sadly died so
Yeah,
young, but had such a big, and probably had no idea that she had that kind of influence on you.
I don't know.
Oh,
So,
that's very
the
touching.
second one for you, Lucy.
Well, the second one for me is another group of people. When I had finished my A levels and before I went to school, I had this gap year, as we now call it, and I went to work in a Barnardo's home, which is a children's residential home near Shrewsbury. And this was because my mum was
Where's
the
Who can pronounce
Yes,
Shrewsbury?
I know. I find it difficult to pronounce because I was brought up to pronounce it Shrewsbury, which I
Okay.
think is not how it's. I think that's kind of rather posh way of
Anyway, it was
pronouncing it. And now
somewhere.
it's Shrewsbury. Anyway, it's in Shropshire, so it's sort of.
Shrewsbury in Shropshire.
It's
Okay,
based in
Shropshire.
Shropshire.
Who can say these
Uh,
things? You
it's sort
British.
of it's kind of
Anyway, doesn't matter where it is,
doesn't
but
know,
yeah.
but
What does it?
it was a big old house, must have been a lovely kind of mansion once, and it was a children's home with goodness knows how many children were in it. Probably, I don't know, maybe 30, something like that. And they would do it was and you know, children's residential homes were far more prevalent then. And Barnardo's, that's what Barnardo's did.
What do you
But
mean children's residential homes? I don't know what that means.
okay,
Was
so
it orphanages?
sorry.
Was it orphanages?
Yes, I suppose you. Well, yes, in a sense, but they weren't necessarily orphans. That, but their parents were not able to look after them. It was
Okay.
you know, children who were in what we call the care system now. So there are still children's homes, but not so
Yeah.
many, and fostering and is much more is much preferred. People being in families, but this was these children. They were up to the age of, I think the oldest was probably about 12. They were divided into houses of probably six children each. So I think there were three or four houses. So yes, maybe 24, 25 children living there in sort of family groupings as they were. And each one had a house mother and an assistant house mother. And I was an assistant house mother for this group of six children. And so, you know, I lived in, it was residential for me as well, obviously. And again, it was a another shock to the system for me. Um, and they were the children had some of them were there because simply their parents couldn't look after them. Some of them were physically or mentally disabled. There was a little girl who was a spastic. I don't even know if that I don't know if that's a thing anymore. I mean,
Of course it is.
I suppose it is. I mean, I yeah. Anyway, she
Of
could
course
not.
it is. I have a niece who has, muscle spasm.
Oh, right. In that, yes. I don't know if we call it anyway. But she was
We
unable
call
to.
it physically challenged these
Well,
days.
she was more than
Call it
physically
anyway.
challenged. She
Anyway,
couldn't
yeah.
walk. She
But
couldn't,
okay, yeah. You're
you know.
painting the picture of, children in need and needing care and being
Yeah,
provided for.
exactly. So there was this little girl, Katie, who couldn't walk, couldn't, I mean, she had to have a special chair to hold her. She couldn't even sit. And she couldn't even eat properly. You actually had to put the food in her mouth and then use your finger. I mean, I'm not sure it would be done this way anymore. Again, and again, remember this was like sort of 1972, maybe. You actually had to keep pushing the food back into her mouth because she couldn't close her mouth properly. And she certainly couldn't speak, but she had ways. She was actually a beautiful, facially a beautiful child. And then there were a pair of twins. There was a boy who was a haemophiliac and was constantly going into hospital because he was cutting himself and bleeding. And there was
He was not cutting himself in like
oh
a
no, no, not no,
no, no,
just
no. Just
falling
but when
or
he had a
battering
cut, he
himself.
was bleeding.
Yeah, yeah. It
So,
didn't help that he was,
yeah.
not the best coordinated child either.
Yeah.
And there was a little girl called Trudy who was like, I don't know if you've ever heard of the character Tracy Beaker, children's character that was no, it's a book, it's a series of books by Jacqueline Wilson, a very well-known children's author that was made into a TV series. And Tracy Beaker is in a home like this, but in these were probably made in the 1990s. This children's series, and Tracy Beaker is always waiting for her mother to come and take her out, and her mother is her kind of like her hero, and she makes plans, and she never turns up. And this is Trudy was like that, and it was, it was just, yeah, very sad. And I mean, they were just
So in 72, you were 18.
I was 18 and they were sort of between 7 and 11, probably age group. But the amazing thing is that through the power of Facebook, I found them again. There's a Facebook page sort of related to this
Wow.
home, and I posted something there, and almost all of them, I know what happened to them, what they're doing. And they are the most amazing group. They have had, in some cases, really awful lives. They were abused in the home. I knew nothing about this, and I don't know if it happened during the period I was there.
How long were you there?
So, and what?
How long were you there?
I was only there for 6 months. It was a, it was a sort of
A gap year.
a gap year job. Exactly.
Wow, a gap year, and then in an environment of people really needing care and
Yeah.
love. And again, an environment that maybe was, it's unseen by most of us, right?
Absolutely. And the home was later closed, and some of them were sent to another home, and some of them were sent back to their own families. And in neither of the ones I know, in neither cases were these good environments for them to be. But they have, I mean, I'm in touch with one or two of them on Facebook. I know what their stories are. A couple of them have got married and are living, sort of stable, happy lives, amazingly, including Trudy, which is just so lovely, and have their own families. Some of
And how
them,
wonderful. Did they recognize you? Did they remember
yes, that was what was so extraordinary. I was there with them for 6 months, and yet they remembered me.
And why
They
do you think that is, Lucy?
Well, I guess, when you're small, people, when you're young, people have like your Mrs. Miedemeier, you
Yeah.
know.
So nothing to do with you, right?
Well,
Don't you
I mean,
think that your caring heart had something to do with it?
I mean, I hope I treated them as well as I was capable of at that time. I knew nothing about, childcare particularly. I was just, there to fill a gap in a way. And
But maybe you did what Mrs. Miedema did for me. You saw them as people.
I hope so. I really hope so because they've stayed with me. The memories of them of children have
Yeah.
stayed with me all my life. And I was so, so delighted to find some of them again on and hear what had happened to them. One of them I've spoken to, a couple of them I've spoken to on the phone. And yeah, it's just they're so resilient given how difficult their lives were and why they had come into care in the first place, where they went to afterwards and what happened to them. And they
So
have,
did this influence you to the point of adopting your two girls?
I, ooh, I don't know. I don't know if that, yeah, maybe it did. Maybe that did.
It's connecting dots here.
Yes, I know you're
To me,
connecting my
that's,
dots for me.
well, that's what we do for each other, right? Because to me, yeah, couldn't that be true? That the influence is that when you were, you know, wanting children, you kind of maybe unconsciously kind of like, I could do something for children in need.
Yes, I mean,
Really provide a home and see them and be with them. And yeah,
yeah, I did feel that I made relationships with all of them and that I was fond of them and they were fond of
yeah.
me. The fact that they remembered me was, extraordinary, really, to me. Sort of like this was 40 years later, I kind of found
Yeah, but
them.
it speaks to who you were to them.
Well, I hope so. I mean, yes, it
So
was,
this is again, listeners, viewers, you see how adept Lucy is in kind of shielding any compliment coming I'm sending her way. I
well,
think it is true. I mean, we are presences in each other's lives, and
yeah,
that's also why I found we said three people or groups of people. It's really difficult to choose
yeah,
because there's
absolutely.
so many people who have been an influence to me, and to you obviously too.
Yeah, absolutely. So your turn. Who's
Yeah,
your
so my turn.
influence?
I'm grouping two people together because it's really work related and it is about liberation. One is I was always wanted to be I wanted to be an interpreter, so I went to interpreter school when I was just 18 in Brussels. I knew no one, and then on our Queen's Day, I donned this beautiful second-hand couture thing that I had bought and went to the embassy because all Dutch people on the Queen's and now the King's birthday can go to the embassy wherever they are for a drinks party. I don't know if that's still the case, but it was.
Oh, how lovely.
And so there I was, 18. Um, and of course, everybody wanted to talk to me and kind of, and so then I went to dinner with this man who I don't know the name of, never seen since. And he had studied the classics. To me, it was clear I wasn't going to continue with the interpreter school because I thought one day there will be a machine, which there is now. It has taken a while. One day there will be a machine. I should do something else, but I didn't know what. And he had studied the classics and said, with that academic background, you can basically do anything. So that's why I studied the classics. So
Wow.
thank you to him at that dinner. And and then I studied the classics, and then I went on to work at the bank in a PR department. And I had, some already. I'd been on boards in my student days. I was surprised that I was asked, but it's been part of my life being on boards. And so there too, I was seen for something I did not see in myself at all. But I'm skipping to, I started to work for a bank, which was in 1981. And that was very much still like 9 to 5. At 10 to 5, people would pack their case and kind of sit and watch the clock. And at 5, everybody would leave the building. And I had expected a very professional environment. I thought, okay, I've been on the board of a student club and we had 2,000 members, so that was kind of a professional thing. But now it's going to happen, right? And so 3 months into the job, I was in tears with my then boyfriend, and I said, everybody is just, everybody is iedereen doet maar wat in Dutch. I don't know how to translate that. Everybody is just, doing anything without a plan, there is no real, you know,
Wow.
it's just haphazard.
Yeah.
And I was so disappointed, utterly disappointed, until I realized, wow, if everybody just does what they think is right, then I can do that too. And that has been a huge liberation because from that moment on, I felt very free to, talk to people about things I observed and I thought could be better, and why are we not doing this, and why are we continuing to do that? And my bosses were like, oh my God, who is this woman who is so free with,
Their
asking questions
opinions.
about things that we've been doing for 100 years. But the people higher up really liked it, and it is in a way the basis of me starting my communications company, and then this bank becoming a really big client of ours. But so the
There's two influences there. There's the man, the unknown man who you went out to dinner with, and there's the culture of disorganization at your bank, which kind of
Yeah.
freed you.
So, but it's both kind of liberating. The first, this unknown man kind of liberated me into thinking you don't need to kind of study law and then be a lawyer. You can, read the classics, Latin and Greek, as you say, and then the world is open to you. And then again at the bank, it's like, okay, everybody does what they think is right. I can do what I think is right. So it's kind of two instances of liberation that I have cleverly grouped together. So
Yes,
I
that's
can have
brilliant.
another one.
Thematically excellent. No,
What
that's
is what is your third?
okay. So my third one is very, very different. So I am going to say my third influence is Twiggy, the model.
Oh, wow. I remember her. Very, very thin, very short hair, like you have.
Yes. Yes, I was sort of, I don't think my current hairstyle is anything to do with being influenced by Twiggy, but she was, I think she's about 4 years older than us. And I remember being absolutely, I mean, I'm not somebody who does, who has heroes, or when I'm asked who's influenced me, who has been my inspiration, I can never think of anybody in terms of work, particularly. But I do think Twiggy did have a huge influence, and she was kind of the spirit of the 60s and the 70s. And I think she was incredibly beautiful, and she wore the most amazing makeup, and
Huge
pioneered,
eyes,
yeah,
right?
pioneered a
Huge eyes.
particular kind of look, and which I thought was wonderful. And I remember standing in in one of the bathrooms in my boarding school with my paint box, because I didn't have any makeup at the time, trying to literally paint onto my face what I
Do a
saw.
Twiggy.
I was Twiggy. Yes, I wanted to look like Twiggy then. I mean, I've never been tall and skinny, so that, wasn't kind of a, but also she did model and she did create styles for, does the name Bieber mean anything to
Yeah, yeah,
you?
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Biba was like the first mini skirts, and that was
Bieber had a very sort of 1920s, 1930s.
oh, really? Oh,
I
then
mean, it
I
did
got
have
it all
short
wrong.
skirts as well, and it was sort of, yes, it did, but it also it also kind of moved into very sort of elegant kind of clothes and lots of velvet and high collars and that has
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and Twiggy sort of modeling those clothes has really influenced me. And then she started acting, and she starred in the film of The Boyfriend. And she was absolutely, I just found, she was absolutely brilliant. And nobody would have necessarily thought that she would be, a good actress. And she learnt to sing, she learnt to dance. And it was just, and I just think she comes across, even now, I mean, there's just been a documentary made of her life, which is in the cinemas here. And I just think she comes across as a really nice person.
Is she still alive?
Oh, very much so, yes.
Could you let her know that she's been a major influence on you?
I don't think she'd be very interested to find.
Why not? I think it's always wonderful to learn. Why not?
Do you think I should write her a fan letter or something?
Well, yeah. I
Well,
mean, if you can find her, why not let her know that if you name three people or groups who have been a major influence in your life, she is one of them. Who
well,
knows? You know,
okay.
she maybe
Well,
just have a bad day and then your email comes and
you never know. Yes, I probably won't, to be honest. But Twiggy, if you're listening to this, feel free, feel free to get in touch.
oh, for her to get in touch. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, to know this.
So, Lisette, who's your last influence?
Yeah, so I think my last influence is also kind of a group of people um, who are thinkers about a future of coherence and self-organization and um, visionaries, really. And an example of this is I'm sorry, Eckhart Winse, who was a visionary entrepreneur who also devised a tax system that after his death in 2008, we created a foundation and they're still lobbying for this. And for instance, he explained to me, I remember I was in my office on a Sunday working. I then had my communications agency with an amazing office where my room looked at the Rijksmuseum. So if you know anything of Amsterdam, you know where I am at the Museum Square. And my partner's office looked at the Concertgebouw.
Wow.
And it was and he came on a Sunday afternoon, saying, don't work all the time. Come, let's do something. And explained to me his idea for a reversal of taxes. Because he said we levy value added tax. Why do we do that? Don't we want value to be added? We should levy a value extracted tax. So tax everything you take out of the earth, everything you pollute. So you take pureness and cleanness out of water and air. And by then the VAT was 19%. So he said if we take 20 years and every year we up the value extracted tax and lower the value added tax, then industry and the whole economy can adapt in 20 years. So imagine this was 1992. If we had done that in 1993, then in 2013, we would have had a completely different economy. And so he would talk to me about uh, the steering power of money, which, still informs my everyday.
Wow.
Uh, and if I have a choice, I can go to the, say, normal supermarket where they also sell organic stuff, or I can go to the shop of the co-op that was started 40 years ago, which really is from farmer to uh, to to the shop, and it's a little further away. They don't have everything I want. There's more sand in their vegetables. I need to wash them better. But it is a choice. So it is a choice of voting with our feet. What do we want to energize with our money? And then, my reasoning goes, I can go to the Odin and fortify that through shopping there, or I can go to the Albert Heijn and shop their organics. And so they will, in their data, see that that happens. But to be aware that every transaction is kind of energizing whatever we are paying for, right? And yeah, that whole thinking is informs my current work as an
Absolutely.
investor a
Yeah.
lot.
No,
And
that's fantastic. And so say his name again because I have never heard of
name,
him.
yeah, is Eckhart Winze. He's famous in the Netherlands and he died in 2008. And of course, his fame is waning as it does. But he was an amazingly original thinker who had theories about, he built a software business when nobody knew what software what it actually was and
Wow,
what it did.
goodness.
And so the people he employed worked in several areas and they had then the Friday drinks because he said that how can I tie them to my company? But also he had the sell philosophy where he said you can only kind of keep tabs on about 30 people. Know where they went on holiday, whether they had a new baby and what the name is. And after that, it's just too many. So when he employed the 31st person, he had two cells, like the eastern part of the Netherlands, western part of the Netherlands. So in the cell philosophy, and those cells were quite self-organizing. And then there was like the head office where he was, which did, the general branding. And it was a privilege for all of us in communication to work with him because of, yeah, he presented annual reports where, for instance, he was interviewed by children. He said, if children don't understand what we do in business, what are the kinds of questions they have? And he was a real pioneer. He was the first one to, with the World Watch Institute, produce a report on the environmental costs of what they were doing and offsetting that. And he did this in the 90s.
Wow, yes, when it hadn't certainly hadn't been thought
Yeah.
of in the wider world, as far as I'm aware. No, well,
And
well,
his
that's
his
amazing.
so the tax thing is called the X tax project, which is really nice because it's extractive tax, but it's also Eckhart, and we called him Eck, and so EX tax project. Still
Oh,
alive, still lobbying. I'm hoping the EU will adopt it and set new standards.
is
But
there any chance of that? Is it looking likely?
these days, who knows?
Who knows? Well, indeed, yes. Yes.
Yes.
Well, it would
But
be wonderful if it
those
happened.
are three people and groups I want to honor. But I also want to say there are many, many more through reflecting on
Of
this.
course.
I'm just so grateful for people who've crossed my path and who groups I've been privileged to be part of. And yeah, it's a great kind of exercise in gratitude.
It is, absolutely. And I mean, people who you've just had, very small interactions with can sometimes have had a massive influence and effect on, something you didn't even know you were thinking about, but suddenly opened your eyes to something or
Yep.
showed you that you could act differently or just by being who they are.
Yeah.
So yes, yes, no, it has been really interesting to think about that.
Yes.
Well,
So we'll have a new topic next time.
we will. And if you're listening and you want to leave us a message in the comments, do tell us who influenced you and why, because I think it's always so interesting.
It's
So
great to acknowledge, people and groups or books or movies or public figures who have been of great influence to us and start, a culture of acknowledgement.
yeah, yeah. Plus, we should have a list of good influencers that we should different kind of influencer
Yeah.
than the
And the
influencers.
influencers.
Yeah.
Okay. See you next
Okay.
week.
Good to talk to you next week. Bye.